This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Island Treasures, a place for caregivers to hear encouragement from other caregivers who, by sharing their experiences, offer helpful information and resources for your caregiving journey. This podcast is brought to you by Alongside Caregiver Consulting, and I am your host and caregiver consultant, Alison Van Schie from beautiful Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. Today's episode consists of two parts, or perhaps I could call them two acts. As playwright and storyteller, Breeda Miller joins me in Ireland for the first act. And then for Act 2, when we are both back in our respective homes in North America, we conclude our interview. Breeda is a return guest on the Island Treasures podcast, and it was because of information she shared in her first episode called The Unplanned Journey that led me to meet her in person in Ireland. In this episode, we talk about our time in Ireland, as well as her two-act, one-woman play, Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home. So let's get started with our episode. Here's Act 1. Well, look who's here. It's Breeda Kelly Miller joining me, Alison Van Schie of Island Treasures podcast. We are coming to you from Ireland.
Ireland.
So Breeda just had her debut of Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home in Ireland. Not the debut of the play ever, but the debut of it in Ireland. And I was able to go. It was fantastic. And Breeda, the first part of the play introduced your family and the history of coming to America, or going to America from Ireland, because we're in Ireland.
Yes.
And it really focused on the composition of your family and how big a transition immigration is.
Yes, it is. And I think as Native Americans or Canadians who have lived in the same place and have never moved to another culture, another country, I think it's hard to fathom how hard it is. And especially if you're coming to a country where you don't have anyone to show you the ropes. If you don't have family or friends who could say, oh, this is the good grocery store, this is the good bank, this is whatever. You just are plunked down and have to figure it out.
And you were not yet part of the family.
I was not. I was not even a glimmer in my father's eye.
But you were impacted, obviously, by the transition and how your parents had to assimilate into a new culture.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk very fondly about people who did make an impact on their lives to help that transition. And as a one-woman show, how hard was it for you to convey the different characters? Because you did. So Breeda is well skilled at this, and she takes on the characters of her dad, her mom, Mrs. Wilson, and herself.
Yes,
Well, that one's probably hard
a few
to play.
guest appearances.
Yes.
You know, Granny Kelly and
Right.
Auntie May. You know.
Yeah.
So I have lived all my life with these people. And so I didn't need to create them. I didn't need to create their voices or their mannerisms. I won't say that I was impersonating them. I like to think I'm channeling them. And that made it so real. And in fact, when I sit backstage, so I'm all by myself. It's a one-woman show, very small cast party. And I say a little prayer and I summon my mom and my dad to be with me, to lift me up, because I know they won't let me fail. And it's very helpful. And I just know that they're they're very proud and they're delighted, and it's my great honor to do this.
Well, it was my great honor to be part of the audience, and I do believe that even though it's a one-woman show, you are partnered with everyone in the audience.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing. There were times when I realized something wet was falling down.
Your eyes were leaking? I made them leak. Oh. I've done my work. My work is done.
Yeah.
But, when I wrote the show, I knew that there were some very poignant parts. I talk about some really difficult things, things that people don't talk about. And I think that's one of the things that people love about it, because they say, oh my God, I thought the same thing. I thought it was just me. But I knew that as a play, well, let's face it, when you're caring for someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, it doesn't end well. And in doing my research on how to build this, I watched a lot of movies, I went to several plays, I read a lot of books, and most of them really focused on the really bad times, the really hard times, and made that case. And fair enough to them. I didn't want my show to be that. I thought, if we're living it and we know it, we don't need to come out and pay money to see a play about the hell that we're living through, right?
It's not a break.
No. And I wanted to find the joy, and I wanted to show examples of, even when we're not our best selves, in retrospect, the lessons that are learned, and that we can always do better. But we're so hard on ourselves, and we always think everybody else has this all figured out. Everybody is better than me. I am the worst. And part of that is the disease of dementia and Alzheimer's, because what worked today probably won't work next week. And our person changes, and we have to just be Gumby. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not get bent out of shape.
I heard you say that. That's funny. Yeah, we should all take that on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's.
And it's flexible. Hard. I mean, this is not a walk in the park, as you well know. And I didn't want to diminish that, but I also didn't want to dwell on that.
No, there were fun times in the play. Yeah. Fun times. So the second half of the play does focus on the transition, a different transition, the transition of the relationship you have with your mother as you address the dementia and being a caregiver for your beloved mother.
Yeah. And that was hard, because she changed so much. My mom was this spunky, feisty, funny, wise Irish woman who was pretty fearless. I mean, she loved to travel. She went to South Africa by herself to visit her brother. She did all these things. And now here's a woman who, as she said, she can't even make herself a cup of tea. And to me, that was such a big statement for her, because she just felt helpless. And she was so afraid.
Fear. Yeah. Well, you don't embrace fear. You have conquered fear.
Yeah.
Coming out on that stage, I would imagine it takes a lot of courage.
But it may be because the material is so ingrained in me and close to my heart, and so many people have told me how much it's helped them. That it's helped them. They felt this burden of being the only one, or this burden of guilt. That when my mother died, I remember feeling so shocked that I wasn't in bits, that I wasn't devastated, and I wasn't bawling my eyes out. And I thought, am I a bad person? And I felt bad about that. But then I realized dementia is the long goodbye. And I had been grieving for years.
All along.
And then I felt guilty, because I felt so relieved for me and for her. But then I realized, okay, now I can think about her, and she can be herself again. And she's not afraid, and she's not helpless, and she's very much present.
Yeah. And speaking of present, there were pictures of your mother and other family members. But Breeda, your mom was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But the backdrop of the play is the pictures, the family pictures. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when I designed the play, I wanted to make these people very real and not be caricatures. And so the set, ideally, is basically a movie theater size screen that is behind me on the stage. And as I tell these stories, these images pop up, and they are my family photos. So I like to tell the theaters, don't worry, no copyright infringement. These were not taken off the internet. They're all ours. Yeah. And many of them are black and white. Yeah. And I think the thing that people tell me that's so amazing is, I start out the show by saying my mother was an ordinary woman with an extraordinary outlook on life. She was not famous. She didn't do anything beyond our family that anyone would know of. And yet she was so extraordinary. And people say they saw their mom in the show. They saw their nan. They saw people. And that when you can think about a life and remember them in such an affectionate way, as my mom said, how, she came to love America, warts and all. And this play is my family, warts and all.
Yes, it is very revealing. That took courage.
Yeah, and I was very nervous about doing the show in Ireland because there were about 20 cousins in the audience.
So Kellys were there.
They were there, and they had the same grandmother. And my mother was godmother to many people in this room, so they knew her well. So I couldn't mess this up.
No.
So no pressure.
No pressure for you.
Yeah.
No. But I'm glad they were there for you.
They did.
Because I think that was very meaningful.
It was so powerful because when I was rehearsing and getting it going, my mom's sister lives in Michigan, not too far from us now. And I went to her and I performed the whole show just for this one person. And she laughed and she cried. And then at the very end, she looked at me and she said, "Breeda, I don't know how you did it, but you got it just right."
Oh.
So honestly, I have the Auntie Betty seal of approval. That's it.
Auntie Betty seal of approval.
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. So, by writing the play, performing the play, by writing the play, you processed your emotions.
I did, yeah.
So how do you manage when you're performing the play to not relive those emotions? Or do you relive
I do.
those?
I do relive them. I take myself right there. But you know what's interesting? So how this all evolved, and maybe the listeners can take something from this. When my mother was in hospice care in my home, I sat with her in her room, and there wasn't a lot to do. She couldn't talk, couldn't do stuff. And I thought, what can I do? And I was the keeper of the family photos and the family documents and things. And I was never a scrapbook person. And my photo albums were pretty pitiful. I thought, what if I did a digital photo album? But beyond the images, I remembered all the stories that she told me. And so I did a narrative. And so I did a digital family photo album that I could then be totally guilt-free and have a copy for I have 4 brothers, each of my brothers and my children and my nieces and nephews, so the family stories lived on. But the therapeutic thing for me was that while I'm sitting with my mom, instead of focusing on her declining health, how she was so frail and, just was really dying in front of me, that instead, or in addition, I was focusing on these pictures of this vibrant, fearless woman and all the things in her life. And it was so helpful for me to focus on that.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
You were living her life.
I was, and I was
revisiting
honoring
her life.
I was revisiting her life, and even though she really couldn't answer questions, although I showed her a picture, and I was trying to find out who one person was, and she said, "Where did you get that picture?" And I said, "Mom, it's yours."
Yeah. It's one of your people.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to just pause this interview now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And there's so many takeaways from the play, and I'd love to continue this.
We'll do part
later.
2.
Okay, we will do part 2. So thank you, Breeda Kelly Miller, for joining me for part 1, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
And now here's part 2. Well, here we are again, Breeda Kelly Miller, and me, Alison Vanshee of the Island Treasures podcast, back in our homes. So we are no longer in Ireland. So part 2 is taking place because we ran out of time, and part 1 was amazing, and I would have loved for it to have gone for hours, but we did have a schedule to follow, and that's why we had to halt it. And now we're starting part 2. So thank you for joining me again.
We had a castle to get to, didn't we?
We did. We were doing a medieval feast.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular. We were piped in. We had the Irish bagpipes piping us in. We had to cross a drawbridge.
Yeah. And I didn't fall in, so 10 points there for me.
It was pretty spectacular.
And it was surprisingly delicious. thinking it would just be, it was a real castle. This was no Disney event. And the servers were also actors and singers. And so it was entertaining all the way through. And they served the food. And I loved that there was no cutlery. You had to eat with the exception, not of a knife, a dagger. Okay. We had a dagger that I kept going like this to eat. And it was great. It was great fun, but it was really tasty as well. So I wasn't expecting it to be that good.
Yeah, because there was a lot of people there.
There were.
They were
Yeah. Well
eating
done.
a lot of common folks.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. The whole trip was so much fun. And so that all came about because of our first podcast together called The Unplanned Journey, that you were a guest on the Island Treasures podcast and told me about the play that you were working on, Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home, and B, the tour that you were arranging to visit the haunts that Mrs. Kelly had when she lived in Ireland. And that inspired in me, I've got to go to Ireland with Breeda and 40 several other people.
It was, it is amazing. And I've learned this all of my life, but especially now, is that when you have a thought and then it becomes an idea, and then you make a phone call and you get some information and you do some more research, and then you make a decision, and then you put it out there, and that's how it happened. So it was just amazing that it all came to be. And it came to be better than I had ever hoped. So I'm hoping this was our first Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home tour, and that we'll organize another one. I'm making this up right now, so I don't know if this is true, but it might be. I'm thinking maybe May of 2025, because I think May of 2024 is too soon for me anyway, because we have other things happening as well. But May of 2025 might be good. So we'll see.
So if you are interested in an experience like we both shared,
Mm-hmm.
mark your calendars.
Exactly. And
once the date is known.
And we'll go to other parts of Ireland because, I think one of the things you may have noticed is there's really no bad parts. So it's just, what do you like? What do you want to do? And we just had, it was a sampler platter of the highlights of the southern part of Ireland. And so I'd like to explore more of the north and the west in Donegal and Galway. And so it's all good.
And I gained an appreciation. I had never really understood what Ireland all was about. We've had Irish friends throughout our lives, and yet I didn't really understand. And so after this, I am a changed person. I have a better understanding of the Irish relationship with the British, which is really important for me, being of British heritage. And I did not get too much abuse because I am British, but I learned a lot. And I think that was really important for me as well.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the gifts of travel. I mean, we have a load of fun, we have great experiences, but it's just a greater depth of appreciation, for people that are often unlike ourselves, but then we also often realize how alike we are. We're much more alike than we are different. And most of us all want the same things. We want to be happy and healthy and care for each other.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I know you're right.
And I'm hoping that there'll be enough time to book some more performances in Ireland on this next trip. So I have a few things I have to do. I have to finish writing the book.
You know what? You do. You have a lot of things to do. And I was going to save that for the end of this part too, but let's talk about that now. So what is in the future for Breeda Miller?
So a number of things. So I will tick off the list that one goal was to perform this play in Ireland. And I'll say for the first time, I won't say the only time.
No, definitely.
So, I have quite a few bookings across the United States. I need to get to Canada, and I would love to come to the Northwest. So we'll have to figure that out. The public television station here in Detroit is interested in producing the show. And so I am very excited about that for a number of reasons. Is that one of my goals? My goal is not to become a millionaire, with Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home, but my goal is to reach many, many people with the messages of this play, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity to educate and inspire and to show respect and to open people's minds and hearts. And if I do nothing else in my life, I think doing this play and sharing it with others is one of the most important things I can do. And not everyone will live near a theater or be able to attend a performance in a theater, because obviously my idea is that that's the best. But if it's on television and it's available for, particularly for caregivers who can't leave their person,
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Another thing, so I'm deeply looking for some corporate sponsors who want to make that happen, because public television doesn't produce anything without funding. And I'm thinking of some Irish companies that market in Canada and the United States, so North America, and that they might want to be aligned with Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home. So I have to get the word out there. Another thing I do is I speak to a lot of organizations that work with caregivers or support family caregivers. And I've done something really exciting. I have combined my keynote, I'm a professional speaker, along with elements of the play. So this keynote is so different and audiences are just loving it, that I'm talking about things in the way that a keynote speaker might, with ideas and actionable strategies and, a few stories sprinkled in. And then I give them a full 30-minute excerpt of the play. And then we do a little bit of Q&A. And it's just wonderful because they don't expect it. It's not something that is typical. And it's just a great way to share the information in a memorable way. People don't remember statistics. They can look at, death by PowerPoint presentations all day long, but you tell them a good story that has a meaning that is relevant to their lives, people will remember that.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then what else?
You said the book.
And the book, and I've decided just this morning, this is fresh, that, I really don't get much done unless I have a deadline, and especially it's hard when it's a self-imposed deadline because I can change it. But I've decided that by December 31st, the book will be complete. Whether it is fully edited and fully fleshed out, maybe not, but all of my content will be done by December 31st. And I'll likely, there's different ways, you can self-publish, or there's some hybrid models. I'll wait and see when it's done. And I have a couple of really great editors who will help me so that I can make sure that it's really good, not just because I like it. And that really helped me with the play as well. I had a collaborator who was not Irish and didn't know anything about caregiving or anything. So if everything made sense to him and he liked it, I felt it was really going to resonate with people. And he was just brilliant at guiding me and directing me. So he not only collaborated, his name is Brian Cox, with the script and shaping it and how did I want to, get this message out, but then also directed the actual play. So that was wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'll probably, I already warned him that I'm going to ask him to at least be the first editor once the script is done. And I will say, with the other reason behind writing the book, the book is called Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home and Other Journeys. But as I was writing the play, I had to keep cutting it and editing it and tightening it up. And I felt so guilty when I had to lose stories or certain elements of characters just because of time. And my rationalization was, I'll put it in the book. I'll put it in the book. I'll do it then. I'll put it in the book. So now this is my way of telling more of my father's story and telling more the expando version of some of the stories that are in the play that are really tight, but that could stand a bit more explanation.
I can't wait. I think that'll be awesome to read. That's a lot, and I'm sure there's more that you're doing as well, but I just want to highlight, you said how telling the story really is something that kind of cements what people are hearing rather than being bored to death by statistics or a PowerPoint. And I get that as a retired social worker. I totally get the storytelling component and how impactful that can be. I did have a few takeaways from the play that I'd like to share with you, and they kind of resonate with what you said. I felt that the play had many offshoots. One was to entertain. And if somebody came and was not a caregiver or didn't know anything about dementia, they would still be entertained by the play. So I thought that was pretty over-encompassing. It does have a really serious message, but there's entertainment feature there as well. It was to engage. I felt the audience was truly engaged. That's the feedback I got. I was talking to strangers. Like, I was talking to a lot of people. It's like, oh, you've got a funny accent. Yes, I do, but so do you. But people were so open to talk, and it was really cool. So they were engaged. The play was relatable. Like you said, it's relatable, whether it was because of the Irish component or whether it was because of caregiving or the dementia. It really struck a chord with folks. I felt another offshoot was to highlight the importance of taking a break before you break. And when you shared that you were at the end of your rope that one day, I broke. And I think it's just so powerful that it is so important that caregivers realize they need to take a little break, any little break, before they break completely.
Mm-hmm.
Another takeaway for me was dementia is a difficult journey. And when you're caregiving for someone with dementia while also raising your own family of teenagers, that highlighted the importance of self-care within being a sandwich generation caregiver. And people don't always understand that. And you were able to highlight that.
You're a good listener.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was easy to listen because I was like, I want to take it all in. Another message you gave was to remind caregivers that there is help available. There is help out there. We just have to learn to ask for help.
I think that's one of the hardest things. One of the comparisons I think about is when my children were little and I went to different mommy and me groups or preschool, and we would sit around and we would discuss potty training, and people would say, so, are you bribing with M&Ms, or, do you like the pull-ups? Are you doing cloth at night? Well, what are you doing? And when my mom became incontinent, nobody asked me, so how's it going? Do you like the Depends, or is there another brand that your mom likes better, or something? Nothing. And I had no idea is this normal aging? Is this a reason to call the doctor? Is this a symptom of something else that's bigger and worse? Or is this a temporary thing? And I didn't know anything. And I think about it that I live out in the country in a rural area and not a subdivision. And there's houses that I can see, but our yards are not bang up against each other. And I've since learned that in the last 2 or 3 years, 3 of my neighbors, who I wave to, but I don't really connect or talk to them that much, have had a parent living with them who was frail and elderly, and that they were the caregiver. And nobody knows it because nobody really talks about it. And they all feel that they're figuring it out themselves. And you've highlighted it so perfectly. We're not alone. We need to reach out. I mean, Island Treasures is such a wonderful resource for people to listen to a great podcast, to learn, to be entertained, to just really help people. And podcasts were not a thing when I was my mom's caregiver. So that was, she passed away 12 years ago, but I was her carer for 6 years before that. And I felt very much alone. So I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, and you make it accessible and engaging. And I think the lesson about take a break before you break, you're not only doing it for yourself, but think about it. If you're being cared for, if you're the person receiving care and you are looking at the person who's caring for you and you see them overtired, cranky, short-tempered, run down, feeling bad, getting headaches, just all the things that stress causes, how does that make you feel as the person receiving care? You know, if your mind is there and you're able to even, my mom never wanted to be a burden. And one of the gifts I could give her was to take care of myself. So I was the best person that I could be to care for her. And that's one of the ways. So if people are feeling guilty about self-care, I remember thinking, oh, I had to fib to my mom one time because I was in a town about 30 miles away, and I popped in to TJ Maxx, and that was always our favorite place to go shopping. And I came home and I mentioned I was, and she's, oh, I would love to have gone. Why didn't you take me? And I was like, oh, I felt so guilty. But I was already 30 miles away in the town. The shop was there. I couldn't drive all the way home, get mom, and go back. And I felt guilty about it because I knew how much she would have loved it. And so you have to let go of that. You have to say, oh, next time, mom, and make sure that there is a next time and that you're able to do it. But even just the idea of going to get your hair done or going to see a movie when the person in your care can't go and you feel guilty because they're at home in bed and you're out having a great time.
You're not having a great time.
But that's
chances
okay.
are it's on your head. How's
On
mom doing? Yeah.
And you know, even after my mom passed away, for a good 6 months, I was on the caregiver leash. I was out with friends and we went to happy hour, which I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't done this in so long. And I'm looking at my watch thinking, oh, okay, I got to get back because I got meds and I got to make a special dinner for mom because mom can't eat pizza or tacos that the kids would want for dinner. I had to make a special mom dinner. And then I realized, oh, no, I don't have to do that anymore. And it took me over 6 months to let go of that and to let go of that guilt that was just always here about what I had to do, where I had to be, things that I needed to do.
Wow, that's interesting. And that's something really important to hear for caregivers and for folks like myself who work with caregivers. There is that transition after you've lost your loved one, but give yourself time.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in you, especially like you were looking after her for 6 years. Like that's a long time.
It is. And the thing too is to, just grace. Give yourself grace. You want to give them grace, give yourself grace.
Happy hour, hey?
Yeah.
So that leads me to back to you were looking for corporate sponsors from Ireland.
Yeah.
Guinness, the #1 suggestion.
Yes, Guinness is a good one. Kerrygold butter is another one.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan, a big user, so it's not a stretch. And another one that a friend of mine suggested is Aer Lingus, the Irish airline, because she said, Breeda, they could then show this on the plane as one of the film options for people going to Ireland. And I'm saying, yes, that's a great idea. I love that. So you know what? You never know.
And it's in the title, Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home.
It's perfect. So I'm thinking travel agencies, travel companies. I know one that I just worked with, so that's a hopeful thing. And Barry's Tea. That's the other.
Of
the
course,
other one.
with you, it has to be tea. But you know, Kerrygold butter, a lot of folks on the tour mentioned how much they loved it, and we don't have it, you know, so.
It's very good. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I used to try to pack Kerrygold butter to bring back to the US. Ziploc bags can only do so much. Let's say that.
You don't want an oily substance leaking out in your clothes.
And if it's near something warm and melts, you know. So anyway, the good thing was I'm able to purchase it here, and it's almost as good. So I'm not going to say it's as good because I do think it's a little bit different in Ireland.
Well, and it's also the ambiance. It's being in Ireland. Like it's just, so much better. Irish coffee in Ireland. Who knew?
Exactly. And I loved, we experienced a demonstration of how to do it properly and make it. And I thought that was really great. So Jim and I learned so much. We really did. And in fact, I'm going to meet meet up with my mom's sister, my Auntie Betty, next week. And I brought her some Butler's Irish chocolate. So she's very excited about that. She's 94.
Yeah.
She's really sharp. She wants all the scoop. What cousins did I see? What are they up to? She wants to know everything.
She'll love that. And in the first part of this podcast episode, you did talk about the seal of Auntie Betty's approval. So yeah, she'll love that. That's so important.
I am so blessed that she's not only part of my life still, she's my godmother, but she's so vibrant and sharp. And I hope that I have her genetic makeup is all I'm saying.
I hope you do too. Yeah, I hope you do too. So we've talked about what's in your future, planned in your future, but what about Mrs. Kelly's journey home? What's in Mrs. Kelly's journey home's future?
The play. Well, as a matter of fact, I just bought tickets. There is an Irish theater group based in Galway called the Druid Theater. And this is really crazy. They have a trilogy of Sean O'Casey plays that they have put together as like a binge session of Irish theater. And they're playing, they are touring the United States. They're going to two cities in the entire country, New York City and Ann Arbor, Michigan.
No way.
Half an hour from me. So this morning I bought tickets for Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night performances to see this play. And I have a friend in the Detroit area who is Irish, and she's a professor of poetry and English literature. And she is friends with the director of this play. And she wanted to introduce me and through email. And then I sent her a message and said, I think she's going to be in Ann Arbor next week. And she said, I'm sending her a message now. So hopefully I'll get to meet her in person at the performances that are in 2 weeks. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, me too.
I have in the Detroit area, 2 big performances coming up on November 19th. I have a tentative agreement with a theater in North Carolina in February, and I have a solid agreement with a theater in Chicago on St. Patrick's Eve, which is a very big deal in Chicago. And we're going to do a matinee and an evening performance. Last year, I performed the play for the first time in Chicago, in this theater in Chicago, and yeah, over 300 people came. They had never heard of Breeda Miller or Mrs. Kelly's Journey Home, and they were so excited. They loved it so much. They said, Breeda, you come back next year and we will sell out the house.
Whoa.
So they were good as their word and booked me again for this March 16th. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's lots of a lot of conversations, and some in California, where else? Texas, Boston. I'd love to bring the show to New York, and there is an Irish performing center there, and it might be a good fit. So I'm open to what opportunities will present, and more importantly, I'm not stressing myself about it. I'm not feeling that I must. I feel that I'm putting this out in the world. It's good work. It's being very well received. It's hitting all the notes that I just hoped that it would. And people are starting to reach out to me and to contact me. So I can't have more than that.
That is very, very exciting. Are you still doing it as a fundraiser?
Yeah, in fact, I think that's one of the reasons, because I don't have an agent. It's just me.
You do have an agent. You did realize that I am one of your agents.
All right, good. I love it. I love it. I'm totally down with that. But I think that's the model that has been so successful, because it isn't about the money for me. I mean, obviously I need to cover my expenses, you know, and when I'm a keynote speaker, that's significantly more financially rewarding than doing the play, but performing the play is just the biggest high I can ever get. So I love that. But the way the model works is because my background, apart from being a recovering caregiver, I'm a recovering event planner. And I used to do major fundraising events for a health system here in Michigan. So I know how expensive fundraising is, and I know how hard it is to do something that will entice donors to engage. And that, you know, people can only go to so many golf outings, and galas are so expensive. This is a creative idea that I think is different. So the concept is people bring me in for 2 performances, an evening performance that is considered the fundraiser, and it has a higher ticket price than normal because it's a fundraiser. And maybe they have a VIP section where they sit near the front, and then we do a meet and greet with me afterwards. And we have a dessert reception that features apple pie that I did not make. And when you see the show, you'll know why that's important that I not make it. One of my favorite stories is about the pie that nearly killed me. Anyway, then, and this is the part that I think is unique and really brings it home. The next day, we do a matinee performance that is a gift to the beneficiaries of the nonprofit. So maybe it is healthcare workers, maybe it is family caregivers, maybe it is families of people that have worked with hospice and or are currently working with hospice. It doesn't matter to me as long as it makes sense. Or maybe it's people that are interested in Irish culture or good stories, but don't have the means to pay for a higher ticket price at the fundraiser. Same show, same performance. My feeling is once I'm in a town, I'm there. And the stage is set up, we have everything ready to go. Why not do it twice, right? There's no difference in the cost to the organization, and I'm happy to do that. So that has resonated with a lot of folks and a lot of groups. And whenever we can work that out, it's more a challenge with getting the theater for those dates, back to back, than anything else. So
Okay.
I hope to do lots more of that. And I think it's a different model. And it really is a good model of service, and it helps raise money, and it inspires and it allows caregivers to take a break.
So important. All right. Well, I think we're just about wrapping up. We could talk all day.
We really could. I know.
You gave me this amazing book. And
yes.
I see that you do caregiver coffee break kits. Like, I thought, what a great gift for a caregiver. So there's a copy of this book in there. There's a mug or a cup.
No, actually, I'm reworking it right now, so I don't want to misrepresent
Glad I
it.
brought it up.
That's exactly because it's about the shipping and the postage and all that. I'm trying to make it so it isn't crazy expensive. So there are 3 books. There is the Caregiver Coffee Break book. There's the brand new book, which is Take a Break Before You Break. Caregiver Coffee Break is really specific to caring for aging parents in your home. Take a Break Before You Break is about the idea that anyone in a service profession, is horrible at taking care of themselves because we're other directed, right? We're always thinking about other people, and we feel guilty when we take care of ourselves. And so I try to slice through that to give you motivation and inspiration to, yes, you must take care of yourself. It's not optional. And then some ideas that go beyond, getting a massage, which is great. I love a massage. But other ideas that maybe don't even cost any money, but are very much a mindset. And then the other thing that's in there that I love, you get a mask that says it's a sleep mask. So it's the kind people want. Okay. Not the, but on the front and the top, it says, go away. I'm taking a break before I break. To remind people, do not disturb. Don't poke the bear right now. She's laying down. He's laying down. Let it be. But the other thing I did was I created a caregiver coloring journal. And what's cool about that is, coloring, they say, is really a good mindless activity. It can be very soothing and helpful. But a lot of the coloring books are big and cumbersome and are usually frowned upon on bringing to a meeting. Like, don't mind me, I'm just coloring while I'm in the meeting. Don't do that. But this is one side. I should have brought one down with me, but one side is a journal to take notes, and the other side is for doodling and coloring in. And my idea was take this with you. And the size is 5 by 7, so it can easily slip into a bag. It's not cumbersome. Take this with you to doctor's appointments. And you have one book that's slim, easy to port around, but you can take notes of whatever is going on in the appointment, future recommendations, medications, changes, notes, whatever. But while you're sitting in the waiting room, because we all know about sitting in waiting rooms, I think I've spent years of my life sitting in waiting rooms, but you could doodle and you could color while you're waiting, and then you have a place for the notes right in the one. So anyway, that's the long drawn out description of the caregiver coloring journal. And I can include some little coloring pencils in there. The pencils honestly have been the bane of my existence as far as postage goes, because I can send it out as with books, and the postage is very reasonable. Once I add those little coloring pencils in there, the postage goes up exponentially. So I'm trying to decide, maybe I'll just mail them separately because it would be a lot. I just don't want to make it so that it's more expensive for people. But I give them a little brown paper bag, and it's really a useful gift to give to a caregiver. I wrote that first book. It was the book I wished I had when I was my mom's caregiver, because I wanted it to be light and breezy. Because honestly, I would sit down and I had a pile of good intentions, a pile of books, and I would be so tired when I would finally sit down, I would be asleep after 2 or 3 pages. Yeah. So this book, and you have it there, is compact. A friend described it as distilled wisdom, and I love that.
Well, I'm going to be sharing your distilled wisdom with my caregiver support group, because they'll enjoy it. So
great. That's good. And it's available on my website, and I'm happy to send them out.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Breeda. Again, I don't know when we will next meet. I hope it's in person again. It was super fun meeting you in person, and super fun seeing the play, and meeting your husband. That was really nice too.
It was, and yours. It was wonderful all the way around, and I'm very, very grateful. And I was sipping my tea this morning, just thinking like, but I do hope to come to Vancouver Island in the not too distant future. We'll have to just figure a way out, because a way to do that. It would be a bit of a drive, but we're up for it.
Well, I've got things brewing in my mind for you as well. So we'll just, we'll talk about those off camera.
Okay. We'll do some damage together. I love it.
All right, I'm going to say goodbye for now, and thank you again for being such a willing guest to return as a guest on the Island Treasures podcast for caregivers.
Anytime. If we want to do an update as I get nearer with the book, be great. Just let me know. I'm here for you.
Sounds good. Well, I hope you enjoyed this rather unique episode. As you heard, Breeda shared that resources were not readily available for caregivers when she was caregiving for her mom. Thankfully, now there are far more resources available, such as books, podcasts, caregiver consultants, and there's even a play to help caregivers. So if you are in the midst of your caregiving journey and need some supports or resources, I invite you to choose what works for you. And you can always tap into alongsidecaregiverconsulting.ca or Alongside Caregiver Consulting's Facebook page or Instagram account. And you can certainly check out Breeda's website, breedamiller.com, for more information on her play and her resources. If you'd like to share your story as a guest on the Island Treasures podcast, please contact me by email either through my website or at alongsidecaregiverconsulting@shaw.ca. And thank you for joining me today. And to Breeda Miller, thank you for sharing your caregiving wisdom, along with your time and creativity. If you don't want to miss future episodes, be sure to subscribe to the Island Treasures podcast. See you next episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.